Okay, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. This is our second day of our 5-day course where I'm sharing with you guys an understanding of the jhanas and the 4 stages of enlightenment. So today we're going to start with loving kindness meditation because this is part of one's practice to be able to train the mind to eliminate anger, hatred, ill will, and all the lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance, even the slightest dislike. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even have the slightest dislike towards others. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do some chanting to ease us into the meditation. You guys are welcome to join in. Then I'm going to guide you in a breathing mindfulness meditation. Then there's going to be a brief period of time where we're doing breathing mindfulness meditation. Then I'm going to come back in after the breathing mindfulness meditation, and I'm going to be doing these affirmations where I'm going to be saying out loud, may I be peaceful. And when you hear that, you'd like to repeat that in your own mind on the out breath. And then I'm going to say, may I be safe. And again, you would like to repeat that in your own mind on the out breath. May I be well. And then may I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. Each one of these you repeat within your own mind on the out breath. I'm going to go through about 6 different rings. I just use this as a learning tool, as a visual aid, but I'm going to go through about 6 different rings until eventually I get to all beings. And you're just going to repeat those in your mind each time on the out breath. And then we're going to go back to the breathing mindfulness meditation and back to the chanting. And what this is going to do is essentially help fill up your mind with loving kindness so that then you can go out into the world through your intention, speech, and actions and be loving and kind. That's where the real transformation is occurring. So if you guys would like to join, I'm going to start with the chanting and you guys are welcome to join in, and then I'll guide you through the rest of the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Namang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savakasangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you'd like to just establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go Anytime the mind moves off the breath, then I'll be back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May mom and dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May my family, friends, co-workers, and neighbors all be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who have caused me harm be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusarang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning to everyone. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to everyone online as well. So this was loving kindness meditation. And I teach this in the group learning program. I teach this in the Harmony Relationships course. But here, I just kind of do it with you, help you guys to experience it. But I would like to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions because I know some of you guys might not have seen me teach this before, where I actually thoroughly walk you through and show you the words of the Buddha and explain all the details. But before I open up to questions on loving kindness meditation, let me just share this with you. Is that this meditation is to transform your mind. Sometimes based on the way that we do this, where we say, may mom and dad be peaceful, may mom and dad be safe, all of these kinds of things, people think that maybe we're trying to change mom and dad. Or maybe it's like a prayer that we're trying to invoke some kind of special power to change mom and dad. This isn't actually true. What it's doing is it's helping your mind to have more loving and kind thoughts towards your parents, your family, your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, all these different people, because what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is all about healing your mind. Sometimes when we have difficulties in relationships, an individual might think the way to solve this is to change the other person. You might have been doing this in your life where you've been trying to change your boyfriends or girlfriends or your husbands or wives or your family or friends or people like this. You'll never get to peace and joy trying to change other people. You need to be able to change your own mind and transform your own mind. So this meditation is going to help build up the loving kindness in your mind, which is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, active goodwill towards all beings without judgment. And now when you go out into the world, you become more loving and kind through your intention, speech, and actions, using that wisdom from the Eightfold Path. So everything the Buddha is teaching you is about transforming your mind. This transformation away from anger, hatred, and ill will, and all those lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance, and even the slightest dislike towards others, it's gradual. It's not going to be instantaneous. It's going to take you multiple years of training your mind with this meditation and all the other techniques that the Buddha taught to get to a point where all your relationships are harmonious. But you need to be able to do this and have confidence and dedication each day, chipping away at this. The Buddha gives a great analogy on this. He describes this digging tool with a wooden handle, and that when you're digging with this wooden tool, each day you're wearing away wood from the handle, but you don't know how much wood you're wearing away each day from the handle. But when you use it for many, many months and many years, when you get to the end of the use of that handle and it needs to be replaced, you'll know that it's not functioning well anymore and you need to replace the handle. But each day you're not going to know how much wood you're wearing away from the handle. It's the same thing that he describes with all of these fetters and all these pollutions, the anger, the hatred, all of these things when you're transforming your mind, that each day, if you commit yourself to have confidence and dedication to practicing these teachings, you're not going to know how much pollution you're wearing away each individual day. But when your anger is completely gone, you'll know that, because it'll be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You haven't been angry and bitter and hostile or harsh with your mom or your dad or your brothers or your sisters. Each individual relationship, it'll clean up one by one by one. So it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that leads to the improvement of the mind. And this meditation is an important part of that. You would be wise to do this in the morning, and then maybe your midday meditation and your evening meditation can be breathing mindfulness meditation. But that's not to say you can't do loving kindness meditation in the afternoon or the evening as well. Because any time that you see anger, hatred, or ill will in the mind, or any of those lesser versions, even the frustration or the slightest dislike, the antidote to that is loving kindness. You'd like to bring loving kindness into your mind. So say you're driving home from work and someone cuts you off in traffic and you notice the anger coming up in your mind and the frustration coming up in your mind. When you get home, do a loving kindness meditation. May that person who cut me off in traffic be peaceful, right? You'd like to let this go. Don't allow your mind to stay wired with the anger, right? There's going to be times where you're going to need to customize this meditation. What I did here is a meditation with affirmations that applies to everybody, but you're going to need to customize this for your specific needs. So if you have someone named Bob or Susie or Rebecca or anybody like this in your life that you have anger and hatred towards, either they're in your life or maybe they're even in the past and you're never going to see them again. They might even be dead. You're going to need to include them in your meditation. You're going to need to include them by name. May Barbara be peaceful, right? May Barbara be safe. Whatever it is, whoever it is, you're going to need to include them. And you might have them in your meditation for a few weeks or a few months, but eventually you'll see that your mind releases that anger, and then you're going to need to bring some other people into your meditation. Normally you start with a ring or two of people you currently have loving kindness for to bubble that up in your mind. Then you go through a ring or two of people you're more neutral about. You don't exactly hate them, but you don't really love them either. They're more neutral, maybe like a neighbor or like a coworker or something like this. You put a ring or two of those people so that this loving kindness can kind of bubble over into that group. But then you'd like to end up with a ring or two of individuals that you do have anger for, right? So that this loving kindness can bubble over into that. And then eventually you'd like to end with all beings so that you're not leaving anybody out. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll have love and kindness for every single being. It doesn't matter what type of being this is, either a human being, an animal, or any of those other beings in the other realms. You'll have love and kindness for all of them. So it's this meditation that's going to work to transform your mind. But then you need the wisdom of the Eightfold Path, which I taught yesterday, to go out into the world through your intention, speech, and actions and be loving and kind. So let me know if you guys have questions on this meditation, because this is going to be a pivotal part of your practice to be able to train your mind to eliminate your anger, hatred, and ill will. And you're going to need to do this throughout your day if you'd like, but in the morning is a great opportunity to be able to do this, so you go out in your day with as much loving kindness as possible, so that now through your intention, speech, and actions, you can be loving and kind in your day-to-day interactions. And that's what's going to produce the wholesome karma for you. So do you guys have any questions on this meditation that we just did? Yeah, sure. And then for those of you guys online, you can put your questions into the comment section of Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like.
Yeah, one question. We talk about the worship. Yeah. So when we worship in the temple, sometimes we also say that may we be peaceful, and we try to have some blessing from the God, right? So when we say, may we be peaceful, that we are asking the God to bless us with peaceful, safe, and well-beings, and for our families. So what is the difference when we say this, in this meditation, we also say, may we be peaceful, be safe, and my parents or my friends. So
Yeah.
it's different, right?
What you're doing is you're rewiring your mind to have these thoughts in your mind of may I be peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontentness. You're not invoking any special power from anywhere because it's not possible. There's no special power that's going to come over you and instantly eliminate your anger and hatred or ill will or give you anything. Anything that you experience in life is going to come from your decisions. It's not coming from outside world. So people that are out there praying for peacefulness, they'll never get to peacefulness that way. It will never happen, right? That's why the world is the way that it is. There's people out there that just don't have the wisdom to understand you can't pray your way to peacefulness. It's just not possible. So what this meditation is doing is you're essentially rewiring your mind to have peaceful thoughts, safety, well, free from discontentness. You're building up this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, including this being who you are. And now when you go out into the world, your intention, speech, and actions can emanate from that. So that's an important distinction to be able to make, because there's so many people thinking that somehow they can pray their way to peace or joy or better life or any of this other kind of stuff. And this just isn't true. It's not the way the world works. It's cause and effect. It's the natural law of karma that is producing any particular result in our life. It's our decisions that lead to any result. So your decision to do this meditation is to bubble up loving kindness in your mind, so that now also your decision is to go out into the world and practice through your intention, speech, and actions to be loving and kind with the people around you. And now when you're doing that, that's when your relationships improve. Right? When people go out into the world and they're just trying to pray their way to a better life, but yet they're still being bitter and harsh and hostile. That's why they're still experiencing difficulties. Or they're trying to pray to change other people, or they're actually literally going out into the world and trying to tell other people what to do, but they themselves are still bitter and harsh and hostile. So that's why when they're putting out that hostility, it's still coming back to them. They haven't started at the root cause of the problem, which is within their own mind. And that's what you're doing with this meditation, is you're starting at the root cause of your bitterness and harshness and hostility, which is in your own mind. And now by rewiring that, you will then be motivated to have improved intention, speech, and actions, and that's what's going to improve your relationships. Yep. You have a question, sir?
Yes. Yeah, I have a question regarding the how I know actually I'm working on it in a right way, because like reading everything here is pretty simple. I just read it, but I think the core part here is like really build the kindness in the mind, right? So how I know that I'm actually not just reading, but also building the kindness towards like the beings. Is it like, I suppose my body have some like a sensation or warming or something, so that I know, oh, it's working, or versus, oh, I just reading without any feelings?
No, you're not trying to produce any feeling. Love, this is another big misunderstanding in the world, is love is not a feeling. People think love is a feeling. Love is a mental state. Feelings, they arise, they change, and they fade away. That's a conditioned feeling. What you're looking to get to is an unconditioned mental quality of love and kindness for all beings, that there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for you to be loving and kind to people. So if somebody is saying they're falling in love with people and they're falling out of love with people, that's not actually love. That's a conditioned experience. That's craving, desire, attachment. That's you're meeting my expectations today, so I will say I love you. But when you stop doing things my way and meeting my expectations, I don't love you anymore. That's actually not love. That's craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations. So that's conditional, based on some conditions. What you're looking to get to is the unconditioned mental quality of love, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And they don't have to do anything in order for you to have that within your own mind. So there's not going to be any kind of bodily sensation or any kind of feeling that you experience when you're cultivating loving kindness. Sometimes people can feel tingling in the skull, right? Because when you're training the mind, which is non-physical, there's this brain, this organ, this physical brain, which are two different things. As you're training the mind, there's a connection to the brain, and some people can kind of feel this, the mind kind of filling up with loving kindness or permeating with loving kindness, but it's not always the case. So the way that you're going to know that this is working for you is you're going to see that in your day-to-day relationships, they're improving and you're being more loving and kind in your day-to-day relationships. But you need to couple this with what I taught yesterday, and you weren't here yesterday. So it was recorded, so you could go back and watch it if you like, where you're going to need to know the Eightfold Path, because practicing the meditation is great, but if you don't have the wisdom of how to practice right intention, right speech, or right action, you're not going to be able to go out into the world and be loving and kind in your day-to-day interactions. So you need that wisdom to be able to go out into the world and interact through this loving kindness that you cultivate in the meditation. You won't be able to meditate your way to the elimination of anger, just like you can't meditate your way to, or you can't pray your way to the elimination of anger and things like this. You can't meditate your way to the end of anger either. Yes, there's meditation that is a component of that, but you actually need to go out into the world and practice through the wisdom of the natural law of karma of how to be loving and kind through your intention, speech, and actions. And that's where you'll see that this is working, because you'll see your relationships gradually improving, and the way that you relate to this situation and this person will gradually improve as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Can you guys check your mics? I think we have a mic on somewhere. Maybe just turn off your mic. Yep. Okay. Let's see if we have any questions here online. Okay, I don't see any questions online. All right. So what we're going to do then is we're going to go to this next topic. Today, what I'm going to be teaching you is understanding and experiencing the jhanas. You'll learn what these are. Then after this, we're going to have a mid-morning break. Then I'm going to teach you the 4 stages of enlightenment. Then we're going to have a lunch break. And then we come back in the afternoon. I'm going to teach you the 10 fetters, which are the 10 pollutions in the mind. So first, before we even start talking about the jhanas, what I was teaching yesterday, which is the Eightfold Path, this is what's going to lead you to the jhanas. What the jhanas are, in just a summary format before we go into the details, is they're enhanced qualities of mind that you're experiencing on your way to the first stage of enlightenment. These are like 4 preliminary phases that you experience on your way to the first stage of enlightenment. And when you get into these jhanas, your practice pivots where you start to focus more closely on the 10 fetters. It's the Eightfold Path, and putting together the Eightfold Path in detail and dialing this into your life more and more closely, that you will then start to experience the jhanas. And this can take multiple years and months to even be able to get to the point where you're starting to experience the jhanas. This isn't a 1-week thing, a 1-month thing, or even a 1-year thing. You're going to need to dial in the Eightfold Path really closely in your life. You're going to see enhancements and improvements day by day. As you guys heard me share yesterday, I've had students that have come here on the morning of the 3rd day and said, hey, the things that you taught the last 2 days, I got this email this morning that normally I would have been upset and frustrated, but I understood and my mind wasn't upset. I wasn't frustrated. I didn't feel guilty or shameful. So people can see improvement as short as 2 days. I've heard students that share that. That's not the case for everybody, but for some people, they can experience that. So you'll be experiencing improvement all the way through your journey to enlightenment. But it's not until you get to the jhanas that you see this real significant improvement in your mind. And it can take this multiple months and years just to be able to get to the jhanas. And the way that you get to the jhanas is by putting together the Eightfold Path. So you're going to need to dial that in very closely, or you're putting together the Eightfold Path very closely. And then as you start to experience what it is that I'm going to explain to you here, you'll know that your mind is experiencing the jhanas. And that means you're putting together the Eightfold Path really well at that point. You're still going to need to dial it in and keep working on it, but you're putting it together to a certain degree that you're experiencing these jhanas. That's why I call it the light bulb is flickering, because you get these little glimpses of improvement to the condition of the mind, and you kind of get these glimpses of what enlightenment is, where you can get a few seconds, a few minutes, or even a few hours of real peacefulness and real joy. But because the mind is not yet enlightened, you'll experience frustration and agitation. Your mind's not enlightened yet by the time you get to the jhanas. So I'm going to explain to you guys what the jhanas are. I'm also going to explain to you what the jhanas are not. I'm going to explain some of the dangers of the jhanas. I'm going to explain the benefits of the jhanas and getting to the jhanas. And just like always, I'm going to pause a few times as we go to give you guys a chance to ask questions. Here, you guys can use the microphone so that way the people online can hear you. And those of you guys that are online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So first, what are the jhanas? The word jhana is a Pali word. The teachings of the Buddha are captured in the Pali language. This is no longer a spoken language today, and everything that I teach is in the English language. There's only 2 words that I still need to use in Pali because they don't translate to just one English word. One of them is the word gamma, which you guys have heard me use many times. And then the other one is this word jhana. I still need to use this word because there's not just one English translation for it. So this word jhana, what it means is meditative or mental absorption, where the mind has absorbed a certain amount of the teachings. And there's been a certain amount of meditation that your mind is absorbed over the course of multiple months and years before it gets into this particular state, where it refers to these states of deep and subtle concentration, where the mind is relaxed and calm, but yet attentive and alert. The light bulb is flickering. That's what I describe it as, because you're getting these glimpses of enlightenment where there's these temporary experiences, right? Enlightenment is permanent by the time you get to enlightenment, but you'll get these little glimpses of what it's like along the way, where you'll start experiencing. It's almost like the sun is here, but the clouds are in front of it. If the clouds start to slowly peel away, the rays of the sun will kind of start to slowly shine through before the sun is, bright, right? It's the same thing with enlightenment. So this is why we talk about it as attaining enlightenment, but some people think of it as the mind is already enlightened, and you just got to get the pollutions out of the way to be able to experience it. And that's what you're going to experience is as you're gradually peeling away these pollution, the qualities of enlightenment start to shine through. In the jhanas is one of the most significant times, the very first most significant time where you really start to notice this, is that you'll experience improvement all the way through, like I mentioned, but it's when you get into the jhanas that you'll really notice this, real significant improvement. It's almost like night and day from when you were off the path to enlightenment till you start experiencing these jhanas. You can really notice that the mind's experiencing them. There are 4 preliminary phases that the mind goes through on your way to the first stage of enlightenment. And the way that you get to these jhanas is by putting together the Eightfold Path really closely, dialing that in your life. And as part of the Eightfold Path is the 5 precepts. You need to be able to practice the 5 precepts really closely. So if you guys haven't learned those things with me yet, the Eightfold Path and the 5 precepts, you're going to need to do that through the books, through the videos, through the live classes that I teach. All of this stuff is available to you, even on our podcast. I have audiobooks. It's all available for you at no cost, where you can gradually be learning and integrating this into your life, and then ask me questions as you need help. So that's what's going to lead you to the jhanas. There's only 4 jhanas. You're going to see various people in the world talking about any number of different jhanas. I've seen people talk about 8 jhanas, 9 jhanas, 32 jhanas, any number of different things. I'm going to show you the words of the Buddha as part of our talk today, where you can see that he only taught 4 jhanas. And then you'll know the truth for yourself, because he explains exactly what these jhanas are. And you'll know what they are and what they are not. And then as you're experiencing them, you'll be able to independently verify and confirm that this is the truth. This is an indication for you, as your mind is experiencing these jhanas, that you're putting together the Eightfold Path really well. It's helpful for you to help you to be able to see that you've dialed the Eightfold Path in really closely. That's the light bulb flickering. Every practitioner will experience the jhanas on their way to the first stage of enlightenment. You can't actually get to the first stage of enlightenment without experiencing the jhanas. And of course, enlightenment itself, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment itself without experiencing these jhanas. These are enhanced qualities of mind that you're going to need on your way to enlightenment. So for example, in the second jhana, you're going to experience what's called oneness of mind or unification of the mind. In the unenlightened state and prior to the second jhana, you have a conscious mind and you have a subconscious mind. Your conscious mind you're aware of, but your subconscious mind you're not aware of it. And both of these are actually polluted. They have pollutions that the Buddha discovered, and you're working to purify your mind. And in order to be able to purify your mind fully, you're going to need to experience oneness of mind or unification of the mind, where you can actually have insight into the entire mind. If you actually had a subconscious mind, you actually would never be able to purify it. So by the time you get to the second jhana, it's just one mind, and you can see the entire mind. You'll be aware of the entire mind. But prior to the second jhana, you won't have awareness of your subconscious mind. So getting to the second jhana, part of what you experience there is unification of the mind, where you now have insight into the entire mind. And now you'll be able to more readily purify your mind because you have awareness of the entire mind, right? So this is the type of thing that you need on your way to the first stage of enlightenment and on your way to enlightenment. So you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without actually having awareness of your entire mind. You wouldn't be able to actually purify your entire mind without actually having that full awareness of the entire mind. So every practitioner will experience the jhanas on the way to the first stage of enlightenment. What the jhanas are is they're temporary. They're not meant for the mind to dwell in these phases. So as you're going through the jhanas, you would like to continue to make forward progress. Sometimes when people get into the jhanas, they're experiencing such bliss and such pleasure, they kind of get bogged down in the jhanas and they don't continue to make forward progress. So it's important for you to make sure that you understand that these jhanas are temporary. They're not permanent. Your mind's not meant to dwell there. But the qualities that you experience in the jhanas, if you continue forward to the first stage of enlightenment, those are actually permanent. You will continue to experience those qualities. Even when your mind's enlightened, you will continue to experience the qualities of enlightenment. But each individual phase itself is meant to be temporary. And it is temporary because you would like to make forward progress. And if you don't make forward progress, your mind can actually regress backwards. So they are temporary. The mind can regress out of these jhanas if you don't remain determined, dedicated, and diligent in your practice. Like if you get into the first or second, third, or even fourth jhana, and you don't continue to be dedicated in growing and developing your practice, your mind will actually regress backwards out of the jhanas. So this is something that you can experience if you don't stay dedicated. So even though you'll experience lots of pleasure and lots of bliss as your mind is in these jhanas, it's important that you stay focused on the goal, which is actually getting to enlightenment, because the mind can get bogged down in there and then it can actually regress backwards. In fact, some people, when they get into the jhanas, not realizing that that's what it is, they think they're actually enlightened. If you've ever heard from somebody that said that enlightened beings still experience sadness, anger, frustration or annoyment or any of these things, these are people that are probably in the jhanas thinking that they're enlightened, and they're still experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and these other discontent feelings. I can assure you enlightened beings don't experience any of those feelings. But for someone who's in the jhanas, if they think they're enlightened, they're still going to be experiencing these discontent feelings, and they might be explaining what they're experiencing as enlightenment, when in reality it's not. Okay, so these are improved qualities of mind that are experienced at all times during your day. Sometimes you'll hear people that will tell you that you only experience the jhanas when you're in meditation. That's what some people tell you, but this isn't true. The qualities of the jhanas, if you're in any particular jhana, you will be experiencing those qualities at all times during your day. Like, for example, what I just described about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Once you have unification of the mind in the second jhana, you'll be experiencing that all through your day. It's not just during meditation that you're experiencing that. And you're going to see the words of the Buddha on this, so you can see it for yourself, where he talks about residing in these jhanas, that it's not something that you just experience during meditation. So these qualities will continue to permeate in the mind, even as you move through the 4 stages of enlightenment. So oftentimes people will mistaken these jhanas as enlightenment. This is due to a lack of wisdom of what enlightenment is. You'll hear some people describing what they're experiencing, and then they're describing it as enlightenment. But if you understand what enlightenment is and you understand what the jhanas are, you'll know that that's not what they're experiencing. They're not experiencing enlightenment. So this is what the jhanas are. What the jhanas are not is they are not something to be boastful about or conceited about. You're not going to put this on your Facebook profile, right? You're not going to be like, I'm in the 2nd jhana. Or you're not going to call your mom and be like, hey, mom, guess what? You're going to be so proud of me. I'm in the 3rd jhana, right? This isn't something to be arrogant and boastful and conceited about, because that's part of what the unenlightened mind experiences, is because it has the pollution of conceit, putting yourself above people or below people. You might feel like you want to go out and be boastful and arrogant about this. And that's not something you're interested in, because that's going to keep you bogged down in the jhanas, and your mind can even regress backwards. You're going to need to get rid of that conceit. So the last thing you're interested in doing is going around bragging to people that you're in the jhanas. That's not going to help you whatsoever. So you're not interested in claiming that you have attained a jhana or being boastful about this. Also, the jhanas are not something that you only experience in meditation. It's not only meditation that produces these. Sometimes you'll hear people talk about jhana meditation. You don't need any specific meditation to get into the jhanas. There's no specific meditation that actually gets you into the jhanas. It's the eightfold path and putting that together very closely that is going to get you into the jhanas. Yes, part of that is breathing mindfulness meditation, loving kindness meditation. Those are part of it, but that's not what's getting you into the jhanas. What's getting you into the jhanas is that you're reducing the pollutions of your mind through practicing the Eightfold Path, which includes the meditations. And now, by reducing the pollutions of the mind through the Eightfold Path, your mind will experience these enhanced qualities of mind. So you're not just experiencing these qualities in meditation, and it's not only meditation that you need in order to experience the jhanas. For example, you wouldn't be able to get to the jhanas if you didn't practice things like right speech or the 5 precepts or things of this nature. So it's not just meditation that's going to get you to this, and it's not only experienced in meditation, that these enhanced qualities are being experienced all throughout your day. These jhanas are not something to crave or desire or be obsessed about, because sometimes when people hear about the benefits of the jhanas, now their mind can crave it, where they can long and yearn for it, right? So you're not interested in doing that. Just understand this is part of the process of what you're going to experience, but don't allow your mind to long and yearn and chase after it, but also don't allow your mind to be over here where you're complacent and you're dull and lethargic either. You'd like to be in the middle, where you're gradually working towards improvement in your day-to-day life, where you can actually improve the condition of your mind in your life. And now you don't have to chase after the jhanas and long and yearn and crave, but you're also not over here where you're, unmotivated and not having any dedication and diligence to improve, but you're just making wise decisions towards improvement, and know that you will experience the jhanas if you keep working towards that improvement. The jhanas are not enlightenment. The qualities of the jhanas, as you guys are going to hear as I talk to you, they're like night and day compared to what you experience off the path to enlightenment is when you're on the path to enlightenment. So because of those enhanced qualities of mind, sometimes people think they're enlightened because it's very significant as you're experiencing these jhanas. So you haven't experienced this type of thing before, potentially. Even if you've used drugs or alcohol or things like this, no matter what you experience during those situations, it pales in comparison to what you're going to experience in the jhanas. But also being in the jhanas pales in comparison to what you're going to experience when your mind's enlightened, right? So as great as it is to get to the jhanas, there's a lot more room to grow, and you're going to experience a lot more improvement and a lot better state when you get to enlightenment. But if you get bogged down in the jhanas thinking that you're enlightened, you're never going to get to the enlightened mental state and experience something that's even better than the jhanas themselves. The jhanas are not anything mystical or magical. It also doesn't determine that you're a special person or somehow you're a unique type of person. You shouldn't think of them that way. They're the result of putting together the Eightfold Path really closely, and every single person who's able to do that will experience these. So you're not a special person just because you're in the jhanas. Okay, so this is what the jhanas are not. Some dangers of the jhanas. Due to this drastic improvement to the qualities of the mind can actually become conceited and boastful, arrogant and prideful about these jhanas. There's even some students that I've helped them to train their mind through the Eightfold Path and all of these different teachings. And as they start to first experience the jhanas, they actually start having arrogance and boastfulness and conceit towards me. They're thinking their mind so concentrated and so well refined and so focused. They're like, oh, my teacher doesn't know what they're talking about, right? And they think that they're better off than their teacher. Well, it was their teacher's teachings that got them to that more peaceful and joyful mental state and that clarity of mind. So this arrogance and this pride and this boastfulness can come out thinking that you're so great because your mind is experiencing such concentration, and you'll think that nobody else is experiencing this. You're the only one, right? You got to get rid of that. You got to not allow the mind to think that way, and just understand that every single person is able to experience this on their way to enlightenment. The mind can become complacent. As is experiencing these improved qualities of mind, you can become complacent because your mind starts to experience the peace and joy, and you can just be kind of laid back and undedicated and unmotivated and not showing initiative because it's like, wow, this feels great. I'm just going to hang out here for a while instead of continuing to be diligent and dedicated and with growth on the path. Okay. If there's complacency, the mind will regress out of the jhanas. This is one of the dangers of the jhanas, is that you get into those jhanas, you experience the bliss, you experience the pleasant feelings and the peacefulness, and you can become complacent, and then your mind regresses back out of it, right? So this is a potential danger. You can become overwhelmed with excitement and joy, and then it's a challenge to actually restrain the mind because you don't have full discipline and full control over the mind in the jhanas. Have you guys ever played with that toy that has like springy snakes, and they're inside of a like a little tin, and there's a lid on it, and you open up the lid, and then like the snakes kind of like pop out, right? So it's almost like that when your mind is moving into these jhanas, that your mind kind of has this bliss, and it almost kind of like springs up. It's like, whoa, right? So your mind can kind of unravel on itself a little bit because you don't have full control over your mind at that point. So the mind can become so overwhelmed that it's difficult to restrain your mind. So you're going to need to continue to train your mind so that you can learn to restrain it. The mind can experience swings of gladness and sadness, or boredom and loneliness as you're experiencing the jhanas. That is not permanent, but the mind can experience that as you're moving into the jhanas because you don't have discipline and control of the mind. So the mind can actually swing back and forth like this. So if you're noticing that, this can be the jhanas where your mind can experience sadness and, kind of disgruntledness or boredom or frustration, and then it can swing over to the happiness and excitement and the joy. So you might notice these swings, and that's where you need to continue to train your mind and continue to be very disciplined as you're training your mind to make sure that you can get that discipline that you need. There can be a significant amount of energy or the surges that you experience when you're in the jhanas, where there's just this energy that comes out of nowhere, and you start having this energy to do different things in your day-to-day life. So you need to, again, be observant of that and know that this is part of the jhanas and be able to discipline and control your mind when these are being experienced. You're going to need to bring in the tranquility, concentration, and equanimity to control the mind here. This is where by the time you get to the jhanas, you need to know that what's called the 7 factors of enlightenment. The 7 factors of enlightenment aren't to determine whether you are enlightened or you aren't enlightened. This is actually a tool to fine-tune the mind. The Buddha gives you the first factor, which is called mindfulness, which is the same mindfulness that you learn on the Eightfold Path, where you have awareness of your mind. But then anytime you see your mind is dull and lethargic and sluggish, you practice the enlightenment factor of investigation energy and joy. That's going to lift your mind up and bring it to the middle. But whenever you see your mind's overactive and excited with these power surges or energy surges or these swings that I'm talking about, you would like to bring in tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. And that's what's going to bring your mind to the middle. Because if you allow your mind to live in that sluggish, dull state, or if you allow your mind to live in this excited, overactive state, your mind's just going to stay wired that way. So you'd like to use the 7 factors of enlightenment to bring the mind to the middle so that more and more it can stay there in the middle. So the 7 factors of enlightenment are in volume 1, chapter 3. And this is what's going to help you to understand how to fine tune the mind as you're experiencing these swings and these surges of energy. Okay, so the benefits of the jhana is that it's an indication that you've developed the Eightfold Path well, and you're headed in the right direction. This is the first really big indication for you that you're headed in the right direction. You're going to see little incremental improvements as you're going through the journey, but when you get to the jhanas, this is a big indication that you're making progress and you're headed in the right direction. There's improved qualities of mind, but you're going to need further progress on the path to continue to enhance those qualities of mind and ultimately get to enlightenment into the 4 stages of enlightenment. As I mentioned, the subconscious mind has been eliminated, and now you have full awareness of the mind. This is a very big benefit for you, because what the subconscious mind is have you ever been somewhere and you've been talking with some friends and you kind of blurted something out? And you were like, where did that come from? Like, I don't think that way. That's not a thought from my mind. Like maybe you said something racist or sexist or something like that. And you were like, that doesn't sound right. Like, I don't think that way. Where did that come from? That's your subconscious mind, the heavily polluted mind, throwing things up into your conscious mind, and your mind just blurted it out, right? So this is detrimental to you, because as long as you're doing that, you're producing unwholesome results. You're producing unwholesome karma in your day-to-day life. So you would like to be able to see your entire mind so that now you can more fully train it, work skillfully with it, and purify it. So getting to the second jhana, where you have unification of the mind, is a huge benefit for you, because now you see what you're working with. And this can be actually very impactful for students. When they get to that second jhana and you're actually seeing the entire mind, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know there was that much pollution in there. Like, I didn't know all that darkness was in there. I didn't realize all those unwholesome thoughts were in there. It can be pretty impactful as you actually look at the mind and you're able to see the entire mind. So the subconscious mind at this point no longer exists, and that's a real benefit for you. When you're getting into the jhanas, you'll be able to cultivate this deep wisdom that leads to continued growth on the path to enlightenment. Sometimes people refer to this as opening of the third eye, or the inner eye, or the divine eye, where you have this introspection and this reflection where you can be very contemplative about the things that you're experiencing in your day-to-day life. Where prior to getting into the jhanas, and when we're off the path to enlightenment, we kind of just plow through life, not really thinking about how our decisions are impacting others and the harm that we're causing to other beings. We just kind of plow through life. But by the time you're on this path to enlightenment and you're getting into the jhanas, you start being more introspective, more reflective, more contemplative. And you start thinking about how your decisions are impacting others and how that can potentially be causing harm or not. So this opening of the third eye, or this inner eye, or this divine eye, helps you to be able to have that reflective nature where you look inward. Because prior to that, people are typically looking outwards for their problems. They think the problems they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis is coming from the outside world, and people will typically be trying to change other people. But by the time you get to the point where you've had this opening of the third eye, you start to understand, and you have understood, that the problems are internal, and you start being more reflective and inward looking. Sometimes people call this the inward looking eye, where you look inward for the challenges and difficulties that you're experiencing in day-to-day life, and not trying to fix other people, but looking at your own mind for what are the solutions to solve what it is that you're struggling with within your own mind. Then another benefit is that you'll have deeper wisdom about what's wholesome and unwholesome what's wise and unwise, and there's improved decision making at this point that's going to lead to more and more wholesome results. Because in order to get to the jhanas, you would have had to understand the Eightfold Path and the natural law of karma to a certain level of degree, so that now by the time you're in the jhanas, you have more wisdom about what's wise or unwise in the world and how to conduct yourself in a wise way, and you're starting to make more and more wise decisions, and you're starting to notice more and more wholesome results coming back to you. So this is part of the benefits of being in the jhanas, is you're going to notice more and more wholesome things happening in your day-to-day life, whether it's your job or your occupation, whether it's your income, whether it's your relationships with the people around you. You're going to be seeing these significant improvements more readily because you're making wiser and wiser decisions in the way that you're interacting and doing things in the world. You're going to notice that your discontentedness has been significantly reduced, but it hasn't been eliminated. There's going to be less sadness. There's going to be less anger, frustration, agitation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. You're going to be still experiencing those things, but it's less than what it once was because you're training your mind now, and you've got some of the pollution out of your mind, so you're experiencing less of that. So it's diminished to a certain degree, but you are still experiencing it. There's more calmness and composure in the mind that is readily available and easily practiced. So during your day, where normally your mind would easily be shaken up, by the time you get to the jhanas, you can more easily practice calmness and composure in various situations. By the time you get into the jhanas, your equanimity, your calmness and composure, especially in difficult situations, will be more developed by the time you get to the jhanas. There's more awareness of the interconnected nature of all beings in the world, not just human beings, but animals and other beings as well. People tend to have more interconnectivity, and they're able to see that ripple effect of decisions that you make and how it affects what's going on around you. So there's more this mind set of interconnectivity among beings, so that then you're more observant of how you're making decisions and how you're affecting those beings. You might notice that you feel closer to all beings and you're not causing as much harm in the world any longer. Smiling becomes easier. There's a more cheerful, more glad disposition, and it becomes easier to communicate and interact with other beings in the world. Because when you have pollution in your mind, it's almost like you're looking out at the world through a dirty window, and there's kind of like this wall or this barrier between you and other people, where by the time you get to the jhanas, that's been deconstructed to a certain degree, and you'll find that it's easier to smile and be warm and gentle with people, and it'll be easier for you to communicate with people, even people you don't know, people you've never met before. You'll find that it's much easier for you in those situations. You'll notice that it's easier for you to develop wholesome friendships because you'll have more wisdom about how to have wholesome relationships. You have better wisdom about who to select to involve in your life, but you also have more wisdom about how to conduct those relationships and have sustaining, fulfilling, and satisfying relationships that are long-term. Because you've now practicing wholesome intentions, speech, and actions through the Eightfold Path. Because in order to get to the jhanas, you would need to be understanding the wisdom of the Eightfold Path, and you would need to be practicing that for an extended period of time. And now, having done so, you'll see your relationship significantly improving based on the people that you're selecting to include in your life, but also the way you're interacting in those relationships as well. So these are the benefits of being in the jhanas. Let me stop here and see if you guys have any questions on what the jhanas are, what they are not, the dangers or the benefits of the jhanas. Any questions on this?
Question about, you use the word subconscious and these sort of psychological terms, thinking Jung, who has studied Buddhism a lot. In the Pali Canon, is there mention of these terms like subconsciousness? Is it stated like that, like a part of the self?
It's not stated frequently because what the Buddha is teaching you to be able to do is be able to have awareness of the entire mind. So he's not teaching you to work with just the subconscious mind or just the conscious mind. He's teaching you to train the entire mind, but there are some rare places where it's mentioned. But ultimately, the ultimate goal is to work with the entire mind. So that's what he's focusing you on. It doesn't really matter whether it's the conscious or subconscious mind, but by the time you get to the second jhana, it's oneness of mind or unification of the mind, but you need to be able to build awareness of the entire mind. So it is mentioned, but very briefly and not very many places. Mm-hmm.
So it's gradually getting into the jhanas, right? It's not somehow there's a flip, or maybe you explained it like that. There's a flip and you realize this bliss and these things. No, it's gradually, right?
It can be sudden. There can be these sudden shifts as you're experiencing these jhanas, but not always. Sometimes it is and sometimes it's not.
Sometimes it's slowly, like you see, maybe there's a day where you feel a little bit of, for a few seconds, some bliss.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe next week again, could be like that.
Yeah, as you're making your way into the first jhana, typically it's kind of like if you had like a flat surface and there was like a worm that was putting its head up, kind of through a hole, and then it kind of went away. Then it popped its head up and it went away, and it popped its head up and went away. This is kind of what it's like getting into the first jhana, that you'll kind of get a little glimpse of it and then it'll go away. You get a little glimpse of it, it'll go away. And then eventually, boom, the worm comes through the hole and now it's fully out of the hole. So you can have sudden shifts where the mind shifts and moves into the jhana, or it can be like this where you kind of experience little glimpses of it, but then eventually, boom, the mind's in the jhana and you're experiencing the qualities all throughout your day.
And this bliss, when it pops up, is it a conditioned feeling, or is it because of some condition, or?
Yeah, that bliss is still conditioned, and getting rid of the pollution is helping you to be able to experience that, but it's still conditioned. That's why it's not permanent. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So is it possible that someone is experiencing the jhanas, but the person doesn't know that? Is it?
Yeah, you can actually stumble your way into the jhanas. There's people, like I've had people contact me over the years that they might say, I did this meditation for, 2 or 3 years, and, I noticed this bliss and this, serene feeling for like a week or two. I have no idea what that was like or what it was. But after that, I never experienced it again. And I'm curious if you can help me to understand what that was. Right. So sometimes you can actually stumble your way into the jhanas because it's putting together the Eightfold Path to a certain degree. And this Eightfold Path, while the Buddha describes it very clearly and very concisely, and you would like to learn it that way, there's other kind of collections of teachings that have a little bit of semblance of this, right? Like Christianity and Muslim teachings, and even some people do like self-help programs and things like this, that those people don't realize that it's actually part of the teachings of the Buddha, but they've kind of put together some teachings in such a way that it kind of like people can stumble into these jhanas without realizing that that's what they're actually doing. You won't stumble your way into the first stage of enlightenment. You'll need to make very conscious choices to get into the first stage of enlightenment, but an individual can stumble into the first jhana pretty easily. And then when they experience it, they don't realize that that's what it is. They'll experience bliss, they'll experience serenity and peacefulness in the mind for maybe a few days or a few weeks. But then because they don't know what it is and they don't know how to maintain it and move past it, their mind will usually regress out of it. And then they're kind of lost and confused about what that is. And I've had a number of people over the years contact me asking me if I knew what they had experienced, and they explain it. And it's obviously clearly the jhanas that they're experiencing. Yeah, it can be persistent. So even though it's temporary, it can be persistent for a few hours or a few days or a week or two. You can have this bliss in the mind where the mind's uplifted and experiencing the bliss, but it is temporary. It's not permanent at that point. So that's why their mind regresses out of it.
I've had experiences somewhat like this where I call it, when you know, when you feel it, you feel it. And I felt really on. Nothing phases me. I'm really connected with everything. And it's really nice, It comes and goes. And when it comes, it's great. But I find myself saying, and maybe explaining this to other people, that it's somehow, I relate it to me. Like, this is me. This is the true me without all the crap that's phasing me, making me irritated. Nothing phases me. So I'm like, this is the true me. I find myself saying it's sort of this idea of self too, and maybe finding yourself by losing yourself. That paradox,
Yeah, so that me that you're thinking of, that's not you because there is no you. That's the universal truth of non-self. So in order to get to the first stage of enlightenment, you're going to need to strip that away and not identify with those qualities that you're experiencing as who you are as a person, because those qualities aren't permanent at this point. So if you cling to those and identify with them as that's who you are as a person, you won't ever be able to get into the first stage of enlightenment. So you'd like to disassociate with those things as being who you are as a person. Okay. Let me see if we have any questions online here. Okay, I don't see any questions online. All right, so now I'm going to share with you the words of the Buddha on these jhanas, so you can see what he taught about these jhanas. You'll see this repeated multiple times in the Pali Canon, and where this is from the 8th factor of the Eightfold Path. But you'll see this same sequence repeated multiple times in his teachings. He puts this as part of right concentration in the Eightfold Path, because it's putting together the Eightfold Path that is going to get you to the point where you're experiencing this. In terms of how to practice right concentration from the Eightfold Path, I taught you guys this yesterday. That's doing the meditation and practicing singleness of mind. But once you put together all those factors of the Eightfold Path, your mind will now start experiencing these qualities. And that's why the Buddha described it as the 8th factor, because this is the indication for you that you're actually putting together the Eightfold Path closely. So I'm going to read this to you, but then I'm going to break it down for you and help you to understand each individual piece. So here's the words of the Buddha. He says, "In what monks is right concentration? Here, a monk distant from sense desires, distant from unwholesome mental states, enters and resides in the first jhana, which is with thinking and pondering, based in seclusion, filled with excitement and joy. And with the subsiding of thinking and pondering, by gaining inner tranquility and oneness of mind, he enters and resides in the second jhana, which is without thinking or pondering, based in concentration, filled with excitement and joy. And with the fading away of excitement, remaining imperturbable, which means to be unable to be upset or excited, calm and serene, mindful and clearly aware, he experiences in himself the joy of which the noble ones say, 'Peaceful is he who resides with equanimity and mindfulness.' He enters the third jhana. And having given up pleasure and pain, with the fading away of former gladness and sadness, he enters and resides in the fourth jhana, which is beyond pleasure and pain, and purified by equanimity and mindfulness. This is called right concentration. So this is the indication for you that your mind has put together the Eightfold Path and that you're starting to experience these qualities. And he's explaining 4 individual phases, which are the jhanas. So you can see here in his words that he's saying he enters and resides in the jhana. because you'll hear many people that'll tell you that you only experience the jhanas in meditation. And this just isn't true. These are people that aren't experiencing the jhanas, and they haven't understood how to experience the jhanas. Because if they understood through the words of the Buddha and they were actually experiencing the jhanas, they would know that it's something that your mind resides in. These qualities of mind are going to be there persistently throughout your day. So you can see here what the Buddha is describing. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down for you so that you can understand each one of these. And I'm going to explain to you what you experience as you're moving into each one of these jhanas. Because when you're in these jhanas, you would like to know you're in these jhanas, because at this point you would like to pivot and start focusing on the 10 fetters more closely. The thing that's got you to this point with the jhanas is that you put together the Eightfold Path to a certain degree, and you've been knocking down the pollution of the mind from the 10 fetters. But now that you're starting to experience the jhanas, you would like to now more directly focus on each one of the 10 fetters. That's why I'm going to teach it to you this afternoon. So here, the first jhana, where the Buddha says, distant from sense desires, distant from unwholesome mental states. What he's saying here is that by the time you're getting to the first jhana, you will have seen the truth that your mind is having craving, desire, attachment, and prior to this, your mind was chasing after sensual desires, meaning that your mind is looking for pleasure through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself. The way that the mind works, that it has this sensual desire, that it wants permanently agreeable contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind itself. There's certain physical forms that your eye sees, and you consider that to be agreeable, and you get pleasure when you see those things. But there are certain things that you consider to be disagreeable, and when you see those things, you get painful feelings. And then the same thing's happening with the ears. There are certain sounds that you consider to be agreeable to you, and you get pleasant feelings based on that. And then there are certain sounds that you hear that you consider to be disagreeable to you. This is because of your sensual desire. Then there's certain odors, there's certain flavors, there's certain physical objects that touch the body, and then there's certain thoughts or ideas or mental objects that go through the mind that you consider to be either agreeable or disagreeable. So for example, if you were walking down the street and you saw a child holding their parent's hand, a little child, you were like, oh, that's so wonderful. Look at that little kid just learning how to walk, holding their parent's hand. That's so wonderful. That's so beautiful. And you get all these pleasant feelings because you see that physical form and you see that as being agreeable. But now when you turn the corner and you walk down the street, you see a parent slap their child across the face. Oh my gosh, you see this as being disagreeable perhaps, and now you get angry or frustrated. What's causing this is your sensual desire. Your mind's craving permanently agreeable forms that you see through the eyes. We're not talking about what's wise or unwise here, because obviously it's unwise to hit any being, including a child, right? But your mind is craving permanently agreeable contact through the eyes. And if you see things that you agree with, you get happy about that. You get pleasant feelings. But if you see things that you disagree with, you get painful feelings like frustration, agitation, and annoyance. This is the mind craving permanence. The same thing's happening through the ear. If you're sitting at a stoplight and somebody pulls up to you with music that you like, you're like, wow, that's my jam. All right, man, let's go. Let's party, right? You're so happy, dancing in your seat, getting all these pleasant feelings, right? Because you're hearing a sound that is agreeable to you. But now you pull up to another traffic light and somebody else pulls up to you with some different type of music that you don't particularly agree with. And now you're frustrated or angry or irritated. It's not the person in the car that's causing that. And it's not the music that's causing you to be frustrated or annoyed. It's your sensual desire. you're craving permanently agreeable sounds through the ear. And you're just not going to get that because you live in an impermanent world. That sometimes you're going to hear things you agree with, and sometimes you hear things that you're going to disagree with, right? Sometimes people are going to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to you. Sometimes people are going to be rude and disrespectful to you. That's the impermanent nature of the world. Again, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise here. We're just talking about what's causing the mind to experience this anger and sadness and frustration and these pleasant feelings of happiness and excitement. It's your central desire. And I can go through these other sense spaces and explain those to you too, like the nose, right? Like say you're walking down the street and you pass by a flower shop and you smell the flowers. It's like, wow, that smells really good. Did you smell those flowers? But now you walk a couple more steps and you get a whiff of the sewer. Ugh. Now you're repulsed by the sewer, right? Because your mind is craving permanently agreeable contact through the nose. So this is happening with every single one of your sense bases. Because remember, what the Buddha is doing for you is he's teaching you the way the world is. He's teaching you how to navigate this world peacefully. He's not giving you rules and commandments about what to do in the world. He's explaining to you what's causing these discontent feelings so that now you can actually transform your mind and get to a point where your mind's completely peaceful and joyful. But as long as you see things as agreeable and disagreeable, you're going to be attracted to the things that are agreeable to you, and you'll get really pleasant feelings with that, but you'll have these disagreeable things that you're pushing away. Right? You might be happening through your tongue. There's certain foods that you're like, wow, chocolate cake. Oh man, that is delicious. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get a piece of chocolate cake, right? But then maybe these carrots or Brussels sprouts or cabbage or I don't know what else you might find to be disagreeable to you, but you're like, ugh, I don't want that stuff. And you try to push it away, right? This is the mind favoring and opposing, or having agreeable and disagreeable contact. This is coming from your sensual desire. When you get rid of sensual desire, your mind will no longer do this. You won't have agreeable and disagreeable contact. You won't have favoring and opposing. Your mind will just understand it's just contact, that these things are impermanent, that sure, there's the odor of the flower shop, and wow, that smells really great. But you know what? There's that odor of the sewer, and you know what? Let's just keep walking. You know what? We don't need to be angry or frustrated or sad or any other discontent feeling just because there's the odor of the sewer. We can just keep on walking, right? We don't need to have our mind to be upset and shaken up just because of the odor of the sewer, right? But this is what the mind will do when it has sensual desire. It'll have this favoring and opposing, or this agreeable and disagreeable contact. And it's going to try to be attracted and pull in these things that it finds agreeable, and it's going to try to push away these things that are disagreeable. So by the time you get to the first jhana, you will have distanced yourself from that. You will still have sensual desire in your mind, but your mind will have seen very clearly that this is a problem, that your mind is having this favoring and opposing, or this agreeable and disagreeable contact. And you will start distancing yourself from these kinds of things, where you'll no longer have that deep repulsion when you smell the sewer, right? It's just like, there's the sewer, let's keep walking, right? Because you'll know that this odor is impermanent and there's no need to get upset or angry or frustrated about it. Let's just keep walking, right? So you'll have distanced yourself from certain sensual desires where you won't be chasing after them. One example that I'll give you is, think about it when we were kids. Boy, we couldn't wait to get chocolate and ice cream. Man, chocolate and ice cream. Oh, it was so good. Any day we could get chocolate and ice cream, that was a good day. And if we had chocolate and ice cream 2 or 3 times in a day, oh my gosh, that was the perfect day. We were in heaven at that point, right? Well, now you're at a point probably, I suspect, that it's like, if you have chocolate and ice cream, that's fine. But it's not like the end all be all of your day. It's not like the most wonderful thing that's happened in your day, right? Just like, I can have chocolate and ice cream, but no big deal, right? So you've distanced yourself from that sensual desire of chocolate and ice cream. Your mind has become distant to it, where you can partake in it, but it's not such a big deal anymore, right? So that's what the Buddha is talking about here, is that you will have done that with many different things. You will have distanced yourself from sensual desires, no longer chasing after the pleasures and trying to please the mind through your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind itself. Because that's what the mind does in the unenlightened state, is it chases and chases and chases and chases. If you're sad, the mind will think the way to solve this is let me go have sex. Or if I'm sad, let me go to shopping and buy something. If I'm sad, let me have some chocolate and ice cream and I'll feel better. But you'll start to see that that's actually the problem. The mind is craving and desiring, and it's trying to get to something that it feels comfortable with. And it's trying to do that through craving, desire, attachment, rather than realizing the whole reason why you're sad is because your mind isn't getting one of its cravings fulfilled. And rather than use a craving to get to pleasant feelings, you understand that that's the problem, that now that you're sad, you need to let go of whatever craving it is that's producing these painful feelings. And the last thing you're interested in doing is chasing after another craving to get to pleasant feelings, because that pleasant feeling is conditional based on this craving. And when that craving is no longer getting fulfilled, you're not going to have pleasant feelings anymore. Your mind's going to move to painful feelings. And you're just keeping this cycle going. So you will have distanced yourself. You still have sensual desire, but you will have distanced yourself from it. The same thing with distancing yourself from unwholesome mental states. You will have seen by the time you get to the first jhana how these unwholesome mental states of things like anger and sadness and frustration and others are just leading to unwholesome results in your life. That judgment and being conceited and looking down on people, it's just leading to unwholesome results in your life. So you're starting to distance yourself from these unwholesome mental states. Then there's what's called thinking and pondering. What this is that prior to being on the path to enlightenment, like I mentioned, we just kind of plow through the world, kind of knocking down trees, burning up the forest, blaming everybody else for the things that we're experiencing, when all along it's you making decisions that are unwise, that are producing unwholesome results in your life. So we kind of plow through the forest, burning up the trees, burning up the forest, knocking down the trees. And we kind of look behind us and we're like, whoa, what happened here? Who knocked down all those trees? Who burned up the forest? Well, it was you that was doing that, right? Because you weren't thinking and pondering. You weren't thinking about your decisions. By the time you get to the first jhana, you will have understood the Eightfold Path and the natural law of karma to a certain degree that now whenever you're facing a certain situation, you will think and ponder, how should I handle this situation based on the teachings of the Buddha? Where before you didn't have that guidance. Before you would just plow through life and just do whatever you think is, important for you to do. But now, having seen the truth that every decision you make leads to a certain result, you will start thinking and pondering about the decisions that you make. You'll no longer just haphazardly push through life. No longer being heedless to just walk through life, knock down the trees and burn up the forest. It's like, my mom's getting angry. I know I'm not causing her anger. What's going on here? What's the best way to handle this? You know what? I'm not even going to go talk to her because now's not the proper time to talk to her, right? Because if you know the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, it's not the proper time to talk when someone's angry and bitter and hostile and harsh. And you'll be thinking and pondering about those teachings, and like where in the past you might have just rushed in there and started talking to mom while she's angry and frustrated, where now if you know the teachings of the Buddha, you know how unwise that is. And you're like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stay away for a few hours, maybe a few days, and I'll talk to her another time. Right? So you'll think and ponder about the teachings of the Buddha and how to approach any given situation. My boss is really upset right now. He's putting all these demands on me to get my work done, where normally you would just get frustrated and angry and think about quitting your job and blaming your boss for all the problems you're experiencing. But now you're like, how can I handle the situation in a better way? So what you're doing here with this thinking and pondering is you're cultivating wisdom about the natural laws, about how to handle decisions in a different way than you did in the past. So instead of haphazardly just going through life heedlessly, You're actually thinking and pondering, cultivating wisdom, being introspective, and trying to come up with what is the best way to handle any given situation that you're encountering. So you tend to spend a lot of time in this first jhana because you're developing a lot of wisdom during this first jhana. You're developing a lot of wisdom about how to handle the day-to-day activities that you're involved in. So this is the first jhana. The second jhana, there's a subsiding of this thinking and pondering because you've been doing it for such a long period of time by hanging out in that first jhana that you've cultivated a lot of wisdom when you were in that first jhana. So by the time you get to the second jhana, that you're thinking and pondering kind of diminishes to a certain degree. You're still doing it, but it's starting to diminish. You're not having to do it as frequently because you have a lot of wisdom on board. You already know how to deal with these situations. When you're in that first jhana, the thinking and pondering can almost seem obsessive, where the mind's almost obsessively thinking about every single situation that you're encountering. But by the time you get to the second jhana, that is subsided a bit. You're still doing thinking and pondering, but you have so much wisdom on board now, you just know how to handle the situations that you're dealing with. But you still need to do some thinking and pondering about certain situations that you're in. There's going to be this inner tranquility and oneness of mind, as well as concentration that's coming into the mind. The tranquility is the peace and calmness. You're going to start seeing that tranquility come into the mind more when you're in the second jhana. And you're going to have this unification of the mind or oneness of mind. This is where you no longer have a subconscious mind by the time you get to the second jhana. It's just the mind. Where prior to the second jhana, there's that conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And as I shared, the conscious mind is polluted, but the subconscious mind is even more polluted. But you don't have awareness of your subconscious mind prior to the second jhana. So by the time you get to the second jhana, you'll have complete awareness of the entire mind. And this can be very impactful because you're going to see a lot of darkness and a lot of unwholesome things that you didn't even realize were actually there. And this can be very impactful for a person. So you're going to have more calmness and composure, and you're going to have this concentration as well, right? So now the mind's going to be more focused. Your concentration isn't fully developed, but there's going to be more of it. There's going to be more concentration in this second jhana where you're able to focus on just one thing at a time. Your mind's no longer wandering aimlessly. You're able to bring it back and be focused and concentrated on any given situation. Now, by the time you're moving out of this second jhana, the thinking and pondering is gone. That you're no longer having to do that deep inner reflection to really think about every single thing that you're encountering, because you've done a lot of that thinking and pondering. You've cultivated a lot of wisdom at this point so that you now have that on board, so that thinking and pondering is gone. But then there's going to be this excitement and joy, which I forgot to mention up here as well. Sorry about that. That in these two jhanas, you're going to be filled with excitement and joy. Excitement is the conditional feelings that based on some condition, you're going to experience excitement. But what the joy is this is the unconditioned quality of mind where the mind is cheerful and glad and uplifted and bright. So you're going to have these two things in the mind. And more as you get closer and closer to enlightenment, that joy is going to rise up more and more, where you're having unconditional happiness or unconditioned joy. And this conditional excitement diminishes, where you're no longer getting excited based on some condition. Boulder, you probably remember earlier when you said, I'm so excited to go to India. I was like, I'm not, right? I'm joyful, but not because of India, right? So there is, in this second jhana and in this first jhana too, there's a condition that is causing the excitement, right? But by the time you get to further along the path, you won't have that anymore, where there's some condition that's causing the excitement, because you're going to see more and more of this joy rising up in the mind, where there's this unconditioned mental quality where the mind can just always be joyful without any condition needing to be met. If I'm here in Chiang Mai, joyful. If in India, joyful. If in Mexico, joyful. If in the USA, joyful. There doesn't need to be any condition met, right? But in the unenlightened state, it's only when this condition is met that there can be excitement in the mind. So you're going to see this excitement and joy kind of doing this, where the excitement's going down. Remember, that's conditional excitement. And this joy, this unconditioned mental quality of unconditioned happiness and joy is rising up more and more. You're going to see this. But here in the first and second jhana, you're still experiencing both this excitement and joy going on. Then when we get to the third jhana, there's going to be this fading away of the excitement. It's going to start going down, right? It's going to start to fade away. You're having less and less conditional excitement because that joy is coming up more and more. You're experiencing this imperturbability where you're unable to be upset or excited, where the mind's calm and serene. What that is the mind's coming more to the middle, that you're no longer having these conditional experiences at the extremes, that your mind's now coming more towards the middle. That's what that's describing. Right? That you're not having these conditional experiences. You're going to notice this mindfulness starting to arise and this clear awareness. Mindfulness is awareness of mind. By the time you get to this third jhana, you're starting to develop more and more mindfulness. You were developing it prior to the jhanas. That's what actually got you to the jhanas, because you were practicing the Eightfold Path, which is right mindfulness. But now in the third jhana, your mindfulness is really heightened quite a bit here in the third jhana. Not fully developed yet, but it's starting to heighten and get this clear awareness of what's going on in your own mind. Then there's more and more of this experience of joy because the excitement's going down and the joy is coming up. Okay, that's what you're going to start seeing there. And then there's this residing with equanimity and mindfulness. Equanimity is calmness and composure, evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation. So prior to equanimity being in the mind, if you got a phone call that your mom has been in a terrible car accident, your mind could easily be shaken up by that. You might grab your car keys and run out of the door and head to the hospital, maybe even getting into an accident yourself. And then when you show up to the hospital, your mind's all shaken up and you can't even talk to the nurses and doctors, right? But by the time this equanimity is coming into the mind, you can remain calm and composed, especially in a difficult situation. Even someone calls you and says, hey, your mom's been in a terrible car accident. You understand mom's impermanent. You're not craving for her to be permanent. You can maintain your calmness and composure. And now you know the best thing to do is calmly make your way to the hospital so that you can talk to the doctors and nurses and now find out what's going on so you can make wise decisions. Sometimes people associate that shaking up of the mind when mom is in the hospital with their love or with their care. But that's not the love and care that is causing that. It's the craving for permanence, wanting mom to be permanently healthy when it's not possible for mom to be permanently healthy because this body is impermanent. So by the time you get to this third jhana, there'll be more and more equanimity in the mind because there's less and less cravings where you understand that these things around you are impermanent and they're not going to be permanent because the thing that's shaking up the mind is the mind's craving for permanence. But by the time you get here, you've already let go of a number of your cravings by this point. And your mindfulness is more fully developed as you're exiting out of this jhana. Then when you get to the fourth jhana, you've given up pleasure and pain. What that means is that you've seen very clearly that chasing after pleasure leads to pain. Right? If you chase after pleasure, you're going to experience pain. The reason why is because whatever you're chasing after to get your pleasure, that condition is not permanent. And as long as you have that condition met, you'll experience pleasure. But when that condition is no longer met, you're going to experience the pain. So for example, if you chased after a boyfriend or girlfriend, right? Chasing, and you get so happy and excited with the boyfriend or girlfriend. Well, when you guys break up, you're going to experience painful feelings because your mind's craving permanence, right? Or if you say, since I just bought these new cameras, I've been using this as an example. Say there's some new product, like a new camera or some other thing that your mind, like a new video game or something like this, and your mind's chasing. You just can't wait to get your hands on that thing, right? Well, if you get all these pleasurable feelings when you get that thing, well, then when it gets stolen, when it breaks, when it no longer works anymore, whatever happens to it, when you don't have that thing anymore, your mind's going to experience pain. right? Or say you are chasing after a piece of chocolate cake. I use this example a lot. Say there's this restaurant that you know has this chocolate cake, and you get really excited anytime you go to this restaurant and you get this chocolate cake. Well, someday you're going to show up and they're not going to have the chocolate cake because the chocolate cake is not permanent. Someday they're going to be out of stock. So if you allow your mind to chase after pleasure, the pain is going to be there at some point because that condition that's creating the pleasure is not permanent. So you're going to end up in the painful feelings. If you chase after a job and you get so excited about the job, well, then when you get laid off or the company goes out of business or you get fired, you're going to experience painful feelings. So it's not to say that you're not going to pursue certain goals, objectives, or interests. What this is saying here is that you've given up on pleasure and pain, meaning you've seen the truth that if you chase after pleasurable conditional experiences, that the painful feelings are going to come right along beside that. And sometimes those experiences are really far apart. You don't even notice that that's what's occurring. Because if you get so excited about this job and you're excited for 5 years, when the company goes out of business and you're angry and frustrated, you don't even see that it's because of 5 years ago you got so excited about that job. That's why you're now experiencing the painful feelings. But if you've seen this truth, then you realize how unwise it is to chase after pleasurable things, conditional experiences. Because if you just keep chasing after pleasurable experiences, you're going to end up in the painful experiences. So you need to be willing to eliminate the temporary pleasure in order to be able to get to the permanent happiness and the permanent joy. Because if you keep chasing conditional pleasure, then you're going to get conditional painful feelings as well. So in order to get to the permanent peace, permanent joy, permanent happiness, you need to train your mind to no longer chase after pleasurable things and instead pursue your goals and objectives without forming your inner feelings on whether or not you accomplish that thing or not. So getting into this fourth jhana, you will have seen the truth that this is just a whole mess of chasing after pleasure because your mind keeps ending up in the painful feelings. And you know what? I'm not even going to do that anymore. Your mind still will be doing it, but you've given up on it and you've realized this isn't what's going to lead to happiness. Because what people tend to do is we chase money, for example. We think money is going to lead to happiness and we chase it for a period of time and we get a whole lot of money and we get a certain amount of money. And then we realize, yep, that's not what's going to lead to happiness, right? You can't get to happiness and peace by chasing money. But of course you need money in your life, right? Because you need to acquire certain resources to be able to sustain this life. But you get to the point where you've got enough wisdom where you realize, yeah, keep chasing that money isn't going to lead to happiness, right? Because if that was the case, there'd be no such thing as a rich person committing suicide, right? There's plenty of rich people who kill themselves because they're experiencing painful feelings. If money, if wealth and fame led to happiness, then a rich, famous person would never commit suicide. But we see rich, famous people commit suicide because they're having painful feelings in their mind. They're not happy, right? So by the time you get to this fourth jhana, you know and you've seen the truth that this pleasure and pain and seeking this pleasure keeps ending up in painful feelings, and you've given up on that and you've decided, I'm done with that. But your mind's still going to be doing it because you have sensual desire, but you've at least seen the truth and your mind's intellectually given up on that. Then there's the fading away of the former gladness and sadness, that because your mind has given up on this pleasure and pain and chasing after the pleasure, your mind is noticing less gladness, meaning conditional gladness, and your mind is noticing less sadness, that there's this fading away of it. Your mind's coming more towards the middle. Just like up here, where the mind is experiencing more and more coming to the middle, you're going to notice that in the fourth jhana too. There's still some discontentedness in this fourth jhana, but it's coming more towards the middle where it's not so extreme anymore. You're noticing more calmness and composure in the mind. And then here's the Buddha explaining that actually. He says, beyond pleasure and pain, right? By the time you get to the fourth jhana, your mind's beyond this pleasure and pain. You're no longer chasing the pleasure, and you're no longer thinking that somehow that's going to lead to beneficial results. Your mind is beyond this, and you're like, I would like to get to this unconditional happiness, this unconditional joy. I'm beyond this conditional experiences. I'm now interested in getting to this unconditioned happiness and gladness. You're not there yet permanently, but your mind is now intellectually made that shift where you're now looking beyond the conditional experiences, and you're now looking to get to this permanent peace and this permanent joy. And now this is where the equanimity is developed, fully developed, where there's complete calmness and composure in the mind by the time you get to the fourth jhana, as well as your mindfulness. Your mindfulness is fully developed by this point. You'll have developed what's called the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you'll be aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. You'll have fully developed that in your mind. We talked about that yesterday, right? So this is each of the individual jhanas and what you'll experience in each one of these. And as you're making your way through these, you'll know that you're doing that. But you don't need to get obsessed with that. I've seen some people, they're like, wow, I'm in the second jhana. I'm trying to get to the third jhana. How can I get to the third jhana? They're so obsessed about this, right? Well, the same things that led you to getting to the first jhana, which is putting together the Eightfold Path, is the same thing that's going to help you to continue to make your progress towards the second, third, and fourth jhana. There's nothing special that you need to do to get from the second jhana to the third jhana. You just need to keep doing what you have been doing, which is practicing the Eightfold Path. But now, as you're getting into that second and third jhana, you start pivoting and you start focusing on the 10 fetters. And that's why I'm going to teach that to you this afternoon. Okay, so this is what the jhanas are. Any questions on any of these individual jhanas?
Maybe only at the first jhana level question. We talk about desires and needs. Let me take one example. After a big sports, then we feel thirsty. We eager to have water, or maybe a bottle of sparkling water. And this is like a kind of need of our body, right, to maintain the healthy status. So there's another saying, like for example, that you said a chocolate or maybe cake. So we go by a shop, and we see those nice chocolate or cakes, and we desire to have one. Mm-hmm. And there is a saying that you desire to have that one is because maybe you need that kind of sugar or those kind of elements. So your body is actually needing those things to keep your health healthy and to maintain your life step. But sometimes you said maybe it's like a craving for something. It's not really you need that one. So how to differentiate clearly that, okay, actually do not need that one. So if I have that, it's okay. I don't have that, it's fine. Okay. So keep that peaceful. But sometimes maybe they're saying that medically that your body maybe need that kind of elements. So you're craving for the sugar part of this cake. Yeah.
Okay. So you need to understand the difference between a need and a desire. And then you need to understand something else called mindfulness. Okay. So what a craving, desire, attachment is where the mind is longing, yearning for something, chasing after it, thinking that this next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So it's not the object itself that is the craving, desire, attachment. It's the way that the mind is longing, yearning for it. Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's just say I was on my way to a hike and I was going to go hiking in the woods for 6 or 8 hours. And I have this liter of water in my car and I'm driving to the hiking trail and I get out of the car and I forgot my water in the car. And now I go down the trail and I'm 30 minutes down the trail and you're like, oh, my water. Oh my gosh, my water. Oh, I forgot my water. And now you hurry up and try to go back to the car and maybe you twist your ankle on the way and you sling open the door. And it's like, water. And now you've got your water. Okay, this is a craving, desire, attachment. This is the mind longing, yearning, craving for that water to be permanent. But now let's just say there's a second person. They're in the car. They also forgot their water. They're 30 minutes down the trail, and it's like, I forgot my water. I'm going to be out here for a while. Let me turn around and go get that so that I can take it with me on my hike. And now you calmly make your way back to the car and you get your water, and now you go about your day and you continue on your hike. The object's exactly the same. It's water. But the difference is the first person had a longing, yearning, and a craving for permanence. The second person understood, like, this water's not permanent. I can just calmly go back to the car and get my water. So that was a person operating through their need, that they needed this water. They didn't have craving in their mind, right? So now they were operating through their need. The first person, they also had a need for water, but it was polluted with this craving, desire, attachment. The mind was longing, yearning for this water. And now they made unwise decisions along the way to the point where they twisted their ankle and they can't even go on the hike anyway. They're now going to get back in their car and they're going to go home because they can't even walk because they twisted their ankle, right? So the object's exactly the same. It's not about the object of whether the object is a craving, desire, attachment. It's the mind longing, yearning for the object. That's what determines whether it's a craving, desire, attachment or a need, something that you need. The way that you're going to know the difference is through your mindfulness, your awareness of mind. You need to be attentive to your mind and look to see, are you longing, yearning for this thing, or is it something that you truly need? So there were times where I would go into a store, for example. I was there to purchase a pair of shoes, right? And I would stand there and I would look at the wall of shoes and I would ask myself, is this a want or is it a need? Do I need these pair of shoes or do I want these pair of shoes? Because at one time I used to have a craving. I used to have like 30, 40, 50 pairs of shoes, right? So I stood there and I would look at the wall and I would say, is this a need or a want? And I wasn't sure in some situations. So I would leave the store and I would leave. I would go away. And then I would observe my mind. Am I irritated? Am I frustrated? Am I upset? Whatever's going on in the mind, that mindfulness will tell you whether or not there's a craving there. Because when you're first getting started on the path, your mindfulness isn't really well developed and it's sometimes challenging to see. So you need to put your mind in the situation, because if you step away and there's discontentedness in the mind, there's a craving. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy the shoes. It just means that you need to let go of your craving, right? So you go away, you train your mind, and maybe you come back a week later, 2 weeks later, you look at the shoes again, and now maybe you step away and see your mind. The mind's quite peaceful. The mind's quite joyful. So now maybe you wait another week or two and you go back and you buy your shoes. And you're going to need to do this up front until you realize you're operating with no craving, desire, attachment. So you might do this with like a mobile phone. Say you would like to buy a new mobile phone. Go to the store, check it out, play with it, look at all the new features, take some pictures, whatever, and then say, you know what? I need to think about this. I'll maybe come back if I'm interested in buying it. And then you leave and you observe, is your mind able to do that peacefully and joyfully, right? Because if not, if you're discontent, there's a craving there and you would like to extinguish that before you buy the phone. Because if you buy the phone and you allow the craving to be there and you get all this pleasure from buying this phone, well, when it breaks or it doesn't work or you misplace it or it gets stolen, you'll be frustrated and annoyed. You're just setting yourself up. You're sabotaging your ability to be peaceful because you allowed your mind to purchase something with a craving, desire, attachment. It wasn't a need. It was a craving, desire, attachment. There might be an underlying need there, but it's polluted with this craving, desire, attachment. So you got to get rid of that craving, desire, attachment, move it out of the way so that now you can fulfill your need. And you're not going to know this initially when you're first getting started until you kind of test your mind a bit like this and you develop your mindfulness to be able to see what's going on. If you're longing, yearning for something, then you know it's a craving, right? That's what you see with your mindfulness. Mm-hmm. Okay, yep.
So just wanted to, I'm not sure if you said that the bliss is in the first jhana, only this bliss coming up?
Yeah,
Or is
right
it-
here where this says filled with excitement and joy. This is where the individual first will tend to notice the bliss, right? But you also have that in the second jhana as well. But this is where it's going like this. The excitement's coming down more and more and the joy's coming up.
Then can you also experience a bit from the first jhana and from the third jhana, for example, or some qualities from the second jhana, or first and the second at the same time, or first and the fourth?
These qualities that you're experiencing in the first and second jhana, they will continue into the third jhana. So for example, this oneness of mind in the second jhana, you will have that all the way until enlightenment. Your mind will always have that. That's why it's not just in meditation that you're experiencing that, or like this distant from sense desires and distant from unwholesome mental states. That's occurring all the way through second, third, fourth jhana. Even in the stages of enlightenment, you're distancing yourself more and more. So those qualities that say like this, and there's nowhere that the Buddha is saying that you're no longer doing that, those will continue. But like this, where he says thinking and pondering, and then by the time down here he says without thinking and pondering, that has been eliminated, that you're no longer doing that deep obsessive thinking any longer. You're still being reflective, but you're not doing this deep thinking and pondering anymore. So if you see a certain quality like this that he never says is basically turned off, then it's going to continue to persist in the mind.
So you start with the first, then you come into the second, then into the third. It's not you start with the first and maybe then you jump into the third.
No,
It's really
No.
like
it's going to be one by one. You're going to experience the first jhana, the second jhana. It's going to progress like that serially through those.
And you said the mind, or it is said that the mind resides in the jhanas. I think it is like hours, days, and weeks. It seems to me, but also we said that sometimes there's this maybe bliss or joy for a few seconds, or qualities from the jhanas for a few seconds, but then for a few days they are not showing, they are not in the mind.
Right, because
That wouldn't be residing, right?
because the mind's not yet in the jhana. It's not residing in the jhana. It's just starting to get some of the qualities of the jhanas.
So just the jhanas are flickering,
Yes.
jhanas, but you're not in the jhanas. It's just showing his head sometimes.
Right. You understand? Okay. All right. Any other questions? Yeah, you have a question?
I want to ask if it is possible to experience the first jhana without studying Buddhism, because I want to ask, because actually my what it described on the first jhana, it sounds like my mother, because she always has no expectation on us or on anything, and she is always positive and kind to everyone. But of course, I don't think she is at like the second or the third. But yeah, I just curious about this.
Yeah, it's possible because these teachings that the Buddha is sharing, they're natural laws, and these natural laws show up in various collections of teachings. The Buddha gives the most complete, most clear, concise, and precise package of these teachings, in my opinion, that helps you to be able to see exactly what you need in order to get to enlightenment. But you can see certain portions of what the Buddha taught in Christianity and Muslim teachings, even business seminars. I've talked to some people that take business seminars, and they're like, what you're teaching about, right speech, we just learned some of this stuff in this, business communication seminar that I took. So sometimes, depending on people's progress in life, they will kind of acquire some of these teachings in different ways. It's still the natural laws, but it's not coming from Buddhism per se, but it's still the natural laws. They're learning them from different settings and different environments. So it's possible to get into the jhanas without having studied the teachings of the Buddha. That's what I called stumbling into the jhanas without realizing it. But if you consciously make your way into the jhanas through the teachings of the Buddha, then you can actually progress out of them, because you won't stumble into the first stage of enlightenment. You would need to make conscious decisions to get into that stage of enlightenment. But the jhanas, you can, yes, stumble into them through various different means and ways, not just the teachings of the Buddha. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, I have one question about like the fourth jhana. So given up like a pleasure and the pain, is it including the physical pain as well, or just mental?
We're talking about mental here.
Mental.
Even by the time you get to the enlightenment itself, you'll still experience physical pain. And you actually need that physical pain, because as an enlightened being, if you were standing too close to a fire, you need to know like, ooh, I need to move, right? But the physical pain in the enlightened mental state is very muted compared to what you experienced prior to that, because the enlightened being is only experiencing physical pain, where an unenlightened being is going to be experiencing physical pain, but they're going to be experiencing mental anguish along with it, which heightens the physical pain. Where an enlightened being, they won't experience the mental anguish. It'll just be the physical pain. So anytime you see talking about this, this is all mental, not physical.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
And the fourth jhana, is it that means enlightenment, or is
No. No, there's 4 stages of enlightenment that we're going to talk about here in a bit. That the mind, once it goes through these 4 jhanas, you then get to the first stage of enlightenment. Then you get to the second stage, third stage, and then the 4th stage is where the mind's actually enlightened. These are preliminary phases that you experience on your way to the first stage of enlightenment. So there's 4 phases of the jhanas, there's 4 stages of enlightenment, and the mind's actually enlightened when you're in the 4th stage. Mm-hmm. Yep.
With the Eightfold Path, you you're very mindful of it. You're trying to, be mindful of wise speech and actions and the Eightfold Path. With the jhanas, is that something you set out to do, or is it just sort of a byproduct of doing all this? What I'm asking is, okay, I've reached the first one, now I'm going to work on the second one, or is it just a sort of a byproduct? It happens.
It's a byproduct. So what you do at this early stages that you are in your practice is just focus on the Eightfold Path. You're going to be learning things in this course that is beyond that. That's one of the things that a wise practitioner will do on the path to enlightenment, is they will know where they're at on the path to enlightenment and know what they need to focus on. So while you're going to hear, you're going to learn about a lot of different things in this course. A lot of those things are just going to be like, all right, that's nice to know. I'll get to that later, right? But right now, what I would encourage you to do, Boulder, is really focus on the Eightfold Path and learning that inside and out and backwards and forwards and implementing that in your life. And then as a result of that, you will start experiencing these. Mm-hmm.
My question, if I'm residing in the jhanas, and I have these jhana qualities I'm residing in, but also this, if I'm in the jhanas, also these qualities of anger, hatred, and so on, ill will, they are still in place, bubble up. Is it? Are they at the same time? Like I have this maybe joy in the mind, but at the same time there's this anger coming up, or is it alternately? Like,
each situation's different and each person's different. There's not just one way.
So
someone could be joyful with anger in their mind, right? Or at least happy with anger in their mind. Because if they have ill will towards someone, right, and they see that person having an unfortunate circumstance, that person can be happy because of that. So you can have anger in happiness at the same time. It is possible. But it's not associated with the jhanas. It's not because of the jhanas. It's because of a person's craving, which is their sensual desire in their ill will.
I'm in the jhanas. I have while I'm in the jhanas, these qualities are permanent in this time, right? Because I'm residing in them. They are present the whole time, as long as I'm in the jhanas. When this anger comes up, is it that I'm getting out of the jhanas in this moment?
No, you're just having a craving that's producing the arising of anger.
But the qualities are still in the mind. I'm still residing in this joy and or this equanimity or this mindfulness.
The joy is not permanent when you're in the jhanas.
Because for me, I understand with residing that I'm permanently in this state as long as I'm in the jhanas.
You're residing in that phase, but the quality of joy is not permanent when you're in that phase of your development.
I think I don't understand the residing word
Okay.
exactly.
So these are individual phases, and you will experience these qualities in these situations, in these circumstances when you're in this phase of the jhana. But these aren't permanent yet.
So sometimes I'm still in the jhana, but the
so for
phase-
example, one second. For example, this thinking and pondering, right? So as you're going throughout your day, you encounter a certain situation and you think and you ponder about what I should do here in this situation. But now you handle the situation and you're off to the next thing. You're no longer thinking and pondering at that point, right? So the same thing with this joy. You can have joy arising, unconditioned joy, for a few minutes, a few hours, a few days while you're in that jhana, but then it goes away because it's not permanent. Just like the thinking and pondering isn't permanent. But in this phase of the first jhana, you will notice that your mind is doing this thinking and pondering, and you will notice that there is unconditioned joy that's starting to peer through more and more, but it's not permanent. It'll be on and off.
Okay, so it's difficult to see if I'm in the jhana because you said that sometimes the jhanas showing his head, but you're not in the jhanas, just flickering. Like you see a little bit of bliss.
So when when I say that it's flickering, it's like you're not having all of these qualities persistently for a long-term period. You can notice that, boom, there's the unconditioned joy, but then it goes away for like week upon week upon week upon week, right? So when it's showing its head, you'll get little glimpses of it, but then it'll go away. And you're not doing the thinking and pondering. You're not distancing yourself from sensual desires. You're not distancing yourself from unwholesome qualities. So you don't have all of these persistently in your mind for a consistent long-term period. That's how you know your mind's not in that jhana. But when your mind is experiencing that, that's how you'll know you're in the jhana, because it's persistent for a long-term period where you're experiencing joy over the course of, let's just say, 6 months. You're noticing joy continuously at different times, but it's raising its head. You're joyful for a minute or two, an hour or two, a day or two, and then it goes away. And then you're not experiencing that joy for 3, 4, 5 days, but then it comes back, and there it is again. And then it goes away for a week, and then it comes back. You'll know that this is persistent, but it's not consistent. Okay. And then the same thing with all these others is you'll notice that they're consistent, but they're not persistent. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to ask about the second jhana. You said like the oneness of mind.
Mm-hmm.
So if the person is in experience the second jhana, so they would aware their subconscious mind, or they would think they would not have subconscious mind because it's already one mind.
Yeah, there is no subconscious mind. By the time you experience this oneness of mind, there's no longer that subconscious mind. That example I gave you where your mind's just kind of throwing things up into the conscious mind and you're just blurting it out without even thinking about it. You're like, whoa, I don't think that way. Where did that come from? You don't have those kinds of things going on where you can see your entire mind at that point. You will know that everything that's going on in your mind, you won't have a subconscious mind at all. It'll just be one big mind that you're able to now see fully as you're getting more and more mindfulness. As you're progressing here and you're getting more and more mindfulness, you're going to be able to see all the things in the mind because it's now just one mind.
So at the second jhana, so the person would have oneness mind all the time, or just like whenever they are at second jhana, they will have the oneness mind.
In the second jhana, this is persistent and consistent, that you'll have oneness of mind from this point forward, as long as your mind doesn't regress backwards, right? Because you can regress if you become complacent. But if you either stay in the second jhana and then continue to make forward progress, you'll have oneness of mind all the way through.
Okay, thank you, David.
Yep. Okay. All right. So now let's keep going. I've got some more to share with you guys here. These are the words of the Buddha. I'm just looking at the time, though, since we're having a long discussion. What I did here, and you guys can look at this maybe on your own rather than me walking you through it. What I did is I went through the Pali Canon and I extracted certain things that the Buddha was teaching that occurs when you're in the jhanas, not just the jhanas themselves, but there's other things that he talks about as well, like blindfolding Mara. Okay, Mara is a unwholesome being that's interested in causing calamity in the world. It's a formless being, it's typically associated with the realm of hell. Some people refer to this being as the devil or Satan or Lucifer, something like this. The Buddha referred to this being as Mara. What the Buddha shares in his teachings is that by the time you get to the first jhana, you've blindfolded Mara, meaning up until the first jhana, Mara is going to be tempting you. Mara is going to keep tempting you and trying to pull you away from getting to wholesomeness and getting to enlightenment. But by the time you get to the first jhana, you've had enough wisdom that's cultivated that Mara knows they can't influence you anymore. So the Buddha describes it as blindfolding Mara, that Mara no longer tries to influence you when you're in the first jhana, okay, starting from there. And then he goes on and he explains all these other things. You guys can read this and you guys can learn this, okay? Because I have it in the on the website. If you go to buddhadailywisdom.com and you click on free books and you scroll down towards the bottom, you're going to see all the PDFs for all the courses that I teach. So just in the interest of time, I don't have the time to go through all of these, but I'm going to hit on a couple of them. Okay, so I explained the first one. I'm going to explain this last one here too. He calls certain things, he calls them inconceivable matters, things that your mind can't conceive. He talks about you understanding what the jhanas are and what you'll experience in those jhanas is inconceivable for you as long as you're not experiencing the jhanas, right? Because I can sit here all day long and explain to you what the jhanas are, and you can understand them better than you did when we first started talking, but you're not going to understand them fully at the end of our discussion, right? So he calls understanding the jhanas an inconceivable matter, that you're not going to be able to fully understand what the jhanas are until you're actually experiencing it. It's kind of like if you've never tasted chocolate ice cream before, I could sit here and explain to you what chocolate ice cream tastes like all day long, and you'll know more about what chocolate ice cream tastes like when we're done, but you're not going to fully know until you taste it, right? And then you'll know, that's what chocolate ice cream tastes like, right? So it's the same thing with the jhanas, and he calls it an inconceivable matter. And he says that if you tried to conceive it, it would lead to either frustration or madness. Right? So if you sat here and you tried to dissect every last little tiny itsy bitsy piece of the jhanas, trying to figure out exactly what you're going to experience in any particular jhana, he said it would lead to madness or frustration, right? So understand that understanding the jhanas 100% prior to experiencing them is an inconceivable matter. It's not something that you can fully understand until you're actually experiencing them. And then he talks here about how to attain the jhanas. He does talk about how meditation leads to the jhanas, but he also talks about how other things lead to the jhanas too. This is where sometimes people look at the teachings of the Buddha in isolation. They will see one discourse from the Buddha where he's talking about how meditation leads to the jhanas, and people are like, Eureka, I got it. I figured out how to get to the jhanas. It's meditation. But no, that's just one discourse. Right? There's these other discourses where the Buddha is explaining other aspects of getting to the jhanas. So you're never interested in looking at the teachings of the Buddha in isolation. You need to look at the totality of the teachings. Like one of the things he talks about is selfishness, that you wouldn't be able to get to the jhanas if you were selfish. right? If you're holding on to things and clinging to things and you weren't willing to practice generosity with people, you wouldn't be able to get to the jhanas, right? So it's not just meditation that leads to the jhanas. And this is where people sometimes look at his teachings in isolation and they don't understand the totality of them, and they're misled to what actually is going to produce any particular benefit or result. So you need to look at the totality of his teachings. So these are some teachings from him of how to actually attain the jhanas. And here's his words with a reference, so you know where to look in the Pali Canon. And then lastly, what I share here is that when you start experiencing the jhanas, this is the time to start focusing on the 10 fetters, to progress into the stages of enlightenment while maintaining your practice of the Eightfold Path. You will never stop practicing the Eightfold Path. When you get up and running on the Eightfold Path and you're consistently practicing it and seeing how much benefit it's producing in your life and in your mind, you will never stop practicing it. Even when you're enlightened, you will still be practicing the Eightfold Path. So the things that got you into the jhanas, you need to keep doing those things while now pivoting and starting to focus on the 10 fetters and eliminating the 10 fetters, making sure that you don't allow complacency or conceit to set into the mind, because those are two things that can easily arise in the jhanas. Is complacency, where you're lacking motivation and initiative to continue to grow and develop, and your conceit, your arrogance, can come into the mind as well, your boastfulness and your pride because of the concentration. Like I told you, I've seen multiple students of mine that have gotten into the jhanas, and then they start thinking that they're better than their teacher, and they start looking down on me, and they start talking bad to me, and they start telling me all kinds of things, and all of a sudden they're off on their own, their mind's regressing out of the jhanas, and they're no longer experiencing the jhanas, and they damage their relationship of somebody who was actually helping them to be able to get into the jhanas. Happens frequently, actually. The mind's conceit and boastfulness can easily come in when you're starting to experience the jhanas. So you need to be careful of this when you get into the jhanas, that your mind can become arrogant and boastful and prideful, and there can be this complacency. And the way that you do that, to make sure you don't get complacent and you don't have this conceit, is understand, as good as it is to be in the jhanas and as wonderful as it feels in your mind, you're not done yet. You got to remind yourself, you're not done yet. You're really just getting started, because whatever you're experiencing in the jhanas, that pales in comparison to what you're going to experience in enlightenment. The mind is experiencing some amazing qualities in the jhanas, but that's nothing compared to what you're going to experience when your mind's actually enlightened. So remember, you're not done yet. You got a lot more work to do to be able to get to enlightenment. The real work has just truly begun, because now your mind is fully prepared with the jhanas and those enhanced qualities to actually do the work that you need to do in order to make your way to enlightenment. Because prior to the jhanas, you didn't really have everything you need in order to get to enlightenment. But once you're in the jhanas, now you've got everything you need to be able to make your way towards enlightenment. So once your mind gets to that first stage of enlightenment, which is just getting out of the jhanas, now you're ready to actually get to enlightenment. Without the jhanas, you wouldn't actually be able to get to enlightenment. So your work has really just begun, because now you've gathered up everything that you need in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So remind yourself this as you're starting to experience those wonderful qualities, that you're not special, you're not better than your teacher, right? And your teacher doesn't think he's better than you. That's not what is going on here. It's that we're all equal, right? And now you're experiencing these wonderful qualities, but if you're interested in experiencing more, you're going to need more growth and more development on the path, okay? So the real work has really just begun, all right? So the light bulb's flickering. Don't let it go out by staying focused with determination, dedication, and diligence, continuing to practice what got you here, which is the Eightfold Path. And normally what I do here is I just open up to see if there's any questions that you guys have on the Eightfold Path, because that's what's going to get you to the jhanas. And since I just taught it yesterday, sometimes there's students here that have learned it, 6 months ago or a year ago, and they might have questions on it. Do you guys have any questions on the Eightfold Path at all? Anything you'd like to ask? I know you didn't even learn it, so you probably have many questions, but you're going to need to go back and learn that.
Yeah, I learned a bit in Chinese. But my question is like different people will have a different treatment based on like a kind of a, how to say, like a prescriptions of a path, right? Or everyone will be trained in the same way by a full path.
If you're going to get to the jhanas and you're going to get to enlightenment, everybody's going to know it exactly the same. So what you learned in China, I can almost guarantee you it's not what the Buddha taught, because what's being taught there is from a whole different tradition that that came about 500 to 1,000 years after the death of the Buddha. And the vast majority of the world isn't learning with the original words of the Buddha. Even here in Thailand, the vast majority of people aren't learning with the original words of the Buddha. So you're going to need to learn this. Using the original words of the Buddha. And because your English is actually so well developed, you'd be able to use these resources that I share, because I know with 100% certainty this Eightfold Path that I share with the words of the Buddha, it will lead to your enlightenment. It will lead to the jhanas. It will lead to this development that the Buddha is talking about. So you're going to need to know that inside and out, not just learn it a little bit. If you're interested in getting to improve state of mind, you're going to need to know it inside and out, backwards and forwards. In fact, what a lot of students will do is they will study the Eightfold Path with the videos and the books and all that kind of stuff, asking me questions and so forth. But then they will schedule an appointment with me to sit down, and they will almost teach it to me as they're confirming that they understand the Eightfold Path. So if you would like to do it that way, you can, where you can study it and then you can sit down with me and almost like be teaching it to me to confirm that you understand it. Because there's no way for you to practice the Eightfold Path if you don't understand it intellectually, because that's the first part, is to first understand it intellectually. Then you can reflect on it and then you can practice it. So if you'd like to do that, you're more than welcome to. You're welcome. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a break, but let me ask you guys the same question I asked you yesterday. It's 11:35. Would you guys like to take an early lunch, and then we'll come back and I'll continue in the class? Or would you guys like to take a little break and then come back and learn the 4 stages of enlightenment? And that means that you probably won't be getting to lunch until about 1 o'clock. So let me take a vote. Who would like to go to an early lunch? Okay, we're going to have a split vote today. Joe, are you voting? No? Okay, so out of you guys are odd numbers, so we're going to get a clean vote. Okay, who would like to go to lunch early? Let me see your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's the majority. So let's take a lunch and let's come back at 12:45, because then I can teach you guys the 4 stages of enlightenment and I can teach you the 10 fetters as well. That'll give you 1 hour and 10 minutes for lunch. Is that enough time for you guys? Okay. All right. So thank you for your questions, and I'll see you guys after lunch. Okay.